Do you remember Angry Birds? Of course you do. Who doesn't love to smash some pigs and throw birds at them? But how much do you really know about the game? Because its history is not all sunshine and rainbows, just like me after smashing a few golden eggs. So strap yourself in for the rise and fall of Angry Birds. The story of Angry Birds begins in 2009 with two Finnish game designers, Peter Vakanen and his wife, Ada de Jong. The couple had founded a small game studio called Gun Ho Games, which created simple games for mobile phones. The idea was to come up with something so simple that people could play it while commuting or waiting in line. Well, they certainly succeeded because one of their titles, a simple physics-based puzzle game called Bedinky, was downloaded over 30 million times. But by 2009, everyone's favorite fruit-hurling smartphone was the iPhone, and everyone wanted to make the next big hit for it. So Hakkinen and de Jong left their comfortable jobs at Nokia to found a new company called Rovio Mobile. This time they aimed to make games for this fancy new platform. And guess what? It paid off. Their first title, a slingshot-based ricocheting ball game called Doodle Jump, became the third most popular iPhone game of 2009. They even made a sequel. But despite being a huge success, they knew they needed something bigger. So when Hakken was brainstorming ideas for the next big thing, he decided to go back to one of his earliest concepts. He had actually developed a bird-throwing game way back in 2007, but it didn't take off. Now, inspired by the success they had with Doodle Jump, he thought it was worth another look. So he and his team started developing the game we now know as Angry Birds. But while the game itself was quite straightforward, creating it wasn't exactly a piece of cake. The team spent over a year and a half in development trying to figure out things like character design, gameplay mechanics, and level layout. In fact, the original version looked almost nothing like the final product. The graphics were more stylized and cartoonish, and there was only one type of bird. There was also no shop or power-ups, and each level only took a couple of throws to complete. But the team felt that although it was fun to play for a few minutes, it lacked the depth necessary to become a truly great game, so they kept working on it. They redesigned the graphics to be more realistic and added a variety of different birds, each with unique abilities and attributes. They also introduced the concept of the shop, where players could buy power-ups and upgrades with the money they earned from completing levels. Finally, they increased the difficulty of the levels so that it would take players more time and effort to complete them, thus increasing the game's replay value. All this work finally paid off in 2010 when Angry Birds was released on the App Store on December. It quickly rose to No. 1 on the top paid iPhone apps chart and stayed there for 3 weeks. Overall, the game has been downloaded over 3 billion times. Yes, billion with a B, making it the most downloaded iOS app of all time. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is the fact that Angry Birds was only available for the first 4 years on iOS devices. That's an average of over 80 million downloads per year. And this insane popularity gave Rovio Mobile plenty of opportunities to expand on the Angry Birds universe. In the following years, they released several spin-off games and 2 feature-length movies based on the franchise. They also launched a number of consumer products, including plushies, clothes, and accessories. And at one point, they even partnered with a Finnish airline called Finnair to paint one of their planes in Angry Birds colors and livery. Can you imagine taking a flight with Chuck, Bomb, and Stella on the side of the plane? You can actually still do. Finnair still has the same livery, although it's not official anymore. But that's beside the point. Anyway, as successful as Angry Birds was, it didn't stay on top forever. As the years went by, it gradually lost its position on the top of the charts to newer, more exciting games. It might have been a result of gamers simply moving on to other trends, but it was likely also due to a series of poor decisions made by Rovio themselves. For example, in 2014, they decided to release a real-time multiplayer mode for Angry Birds, which required a constant internet connection. Although this might sound like a good idea on paper, it proved to be a terrible decision because many players didn't always have access to reliable internet. And not only that, but multiplayer matches often suffered from lag and other connectivity issues. This frustrated players who preferred the original single-player formula. And with the exception of the Star Wars and Go versions, this multiplayer mode was generally unpopular, and it was removed in later updates. Another questionable decision was to release too many spin-off games, which diluted the brand and confused consumers. For example, Angry Birds Stella, Angry Birds Toons, Angry Birds Epic, Angry Birds Space, Angry Birds Dream, Big, Angry Birds Friends, Angry Birds 2, Angry Birds Evolution, and so on. And then there are the crossovers like Angry Birds in Space, Angry Birds and Star Wars, Angry Birds and Disney, Angry Birds and NASA. Which one is your favorite? Comment down below. Besides releasing too many games, Rovio also started relying too much on paid advertising instead of focusing on organic growth through word of mouth. This led to lower player retention rates and ultimately to the decline of the Angry Birds brand. By 2016, the downloads had fallen to only a few million per year. But Rovio refused to accept defeat. Instead, they went back to the drawing board and tried to reinvent the Angry Birds experience. In 2019, they soft-launched a brand new core game called Angry Birds, Isle of Pigs. Unlike previous entries, it featured 3D graphics and a more open-ended level structure. Players needed to explore the environment to find hidden objects and solve puzzles in order to progress. But despite decent reviews, the game didn't gain much traction, and it's still only available in soft launch form. And last but not least, there's Angry Birds Reloaded, a 2021 reimagining of the original game with updated graphics and a heavy emphasis on competitive multiplayer. Although this game seems more faithful to the original concept, it hasn't achieved any significant success either. It currently has mostly negative reviews on Steam, and there haven't been any major updates since 2021. And so the legacy of Angry Birds lives on, but without the same magic that made it so popular in the first place. With a total of 5 billion downloads across all platforms, Angry Birds is still the most successful mobile game of all time. But it's safe to say that it will never reach the heights it once did. It's a sad end for a game that brought joy to millions around the world. So what do you think? Did you enjoy Angry Birds back in the day? How fondly do you remember playing it? And why do you think it became so popular in the first place? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.